Welcome to Women in the Arena podcast, the podcast celebrating women doing extraordinary things in plain sight. I'm your host, Audra Egan, and our mission is to elevate the value, strength, and resilience each woman brings to the world. Without further delay, let's go ahead and start the show. Welcome in, everyone. I am so glad that you're here. This is Audra Egan, the host of Women in the Arena podcast. But today we're going to do things a little bit differently. Today's topic is regarding emotional intelligence. And if ever there was a time for this discussion, it is now. It is such an important topic, though. The length of my podcast goes a little bit longer than normal, so I do ask for a little extra of your time. But I assure you, the information is so timely and is so important that you can use today, right now, your everyday life, your professional life, that it will be worth it. So with that, let's go ahead and start the show. So welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. And I am really excited to introduce you to this lovely lady that I have as my guest today. I've been wanting to introduce you to her for quite a while. She's this incredible, dynamic, and really charismatic woman who connects with everyday, all around women, and that is part of her passion. So I'm really excited for you to meet her and get to know her. With that, let me introduce you to her. This is Miss Cate Dalton, and thank you so much for joining me today on the show.
Oh my goodness, thank you for having me, Miss Audra. I am honored.
Oh, it is, like I said, I've been so looking forward to having you here with me and the audience get to know you as I've gotten the chance to get to know you and just hear about what your passion is and what your mission is. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So before we jump in there, Cate, tell us a little bit about yourself, just so the audience can get to know you.
Yeah. So I am a middle-aged woman. I'm going to start with that because I have found that I always thought that this concept of middle age was a bad thing. And I'm calling myself middle-aged. I'll be 49 next week. In 5 days, I'll be 49 years old. Holy cow. And I'll tell you something, I've learned a lot in my adulthood. And one of the things I'm learning is that what middle age looks like for other people is not what it has to look like for me. So I think it's really cool that I'm a middle-aged woman and I get to be on a podcast, for instance, as an example. But a little background on me. I am a daughter of 3 girls. I was a middle child, for anyone out there who is a middle child and can identify with that experience. I grew up in a very interesting home, which we may end up talking about here in a little bit. Was kind of raised all over the country. My father was actually a hospital administrator, and he built hospitals for companies. Many people think I'm a military brat when I tell them how many places I've lived, but that was not the case. But ultimately, I settled in Colorado in 1997, came up to Golden, Colorado, and am now down in Roxborough Park. My career is not what I studied. I grew up studying theater from the age of 9, including a performing arts high school and a degree at the University of Southern California. But I actually work in corporate America in the financial services industry. So that's kind of a quick highlight. I've got an amazing husband. He is not my first husband, but he is my last, I hope. That's the plan. And then I've got 2 kiddos. One is 19 and one is 17, and they're out in the big bad world almost. One of them is trying to be, and the other one is getting ready to launch this fall. So that's what that looks like.
Well, launching children, we're doing quite a bit of that over here in our household as well, and it is not easy. It's not for the faint of heart.
Right?
And my biggest complaint with raising young adult children as you can't ground them anymore.
Yeah.
That's my
No,
biggest complaint with these young adult children, because otherwise it's still just as hard. As a matter of fact, in a
it
lot of
is.
cases, it's harder. Um,
Yeah.
but let me start with, you mentioned middle aged. First of all, my thought of middle aged was not anything of what it looks like now. Um, those of you that are listening, yes, she says she's 49. I'm telling you, 49 is the new 29. Cate is gorgeous, and 40, she makes 49 look good. Whatever 49 is supposed to look like, she makes it look amazing. Um,
Oh, you're too kind.
I speak the truth. Um,
Thank you.
but isn't that interesting that we had this preconceived notion of what middle-aged is supposed to be or supposed to look like, and it's
Yeah.
nothing like that.
No, no, it's not. I remember my grandmother even saying to me when she was 86, she said, "I know you think I'm 86, Cate, but I'm really 22 in here," as she pointed to the temple of her head. And I thought, I hope I understand what that means someday. And now I think I do. I've heard this from other women. And one of the things that I love about what you're doing with your podcast and how powerful it is this concept of women really coming in the arena. That's where I learned that I can create myself. I didn't come up with that idea on my own. It happened from other middle-aged women who recreated themselves, who saw the stereotype and said, "That's not me. I'm not interested," or "I'm not ready. I'm still going to be young," and they chose to, and therefore they were. And that's what I aspire to do, is to just really lean into life as much as possible and not let it define me.
I think that is such an incredible way to focus your life, where you are constantly the learner. You are constantly in a state of
Mm,
evolution, so
yes.
that you are growing at all times. I will tell you that my grandmother was well into her 90s when she died, but one of the things she said to me that made zero sense when she said it, but now makes perfect sense. She told me that the moment you stop learning, or the moment you close yourself up from education, whatever that form it may take,
Mm-hmm.
that is when you're dying, and that's when you've given up. Um,
Mm, powerful.
and like I said, it made zero sense to me at the time when she said it to me, but now
Sure.
it's such clarity. Have you found that to be true as well?
Absolutely. I have found that to be true. You know, I believe a lot in actions. And one of my biggest passions, as you know, is emotional intelligence.
Yes, that is one of my
Grow-
favorite things to hear you talk about. So
Oh, thank you. I
please,
love it.
so
I love it.
please share, because I know that everyone will want to hear this, because it's such a fascinating topic. And what I've learned is that it permeates absolutely everything we do, but it's so little studied. It's not prominent, and that's
Yeah.
such a shame. So let me step back and let you talk about it, because I know that this is an incredible passion for you and you're such a great champion for it. I don't do it justice, so please share with us your
Oh,
passion.
sure. So, and it ties into your grandmother's statement too. When, usually passion is sort of a double-sided coin. It's something we love and or something we hate, with a passion, right? So that color red, that ties to passion, can go many directions. And I have to admit, I grew up hating feeling. I did not want to feel. I didn't want to feel an emotion. And what ultimately happened to me is the only emotions I was able to identify as a very young adult were rage and anger, or a sense of depression, is what I ultimately tagged it to. Terror, maybe, or fear would be another one. And none of that was a good time. So who wants feelings? So I was one of those runners, and I'm sure there are some listening, that went to any length not to feel an emotion. And one way to do that is busyness, through lots and lots of activity. I have explored just about every way on the planet to not feel. And ultimately, the one that still can rest on me is busyness. And the reason I'll still use it sometimes is not because I no longer love my emotions, because I absolutely do, because of emotional intelligence, which I know you asked me to talk about, and I will here in a second, but because action is how I can continue to lean into a new idea. I can't think my way into a new idea. I can't decide to be teachable and think about being teachable. I have to actually do something tactically that is leaning into this idea that I'm going to learn.
So stop on
And
that for a minute and give us an
sure.
example, because you made such a powerful statement, but I think that it's wonderful if you can give a visualization of that.
So here's just a real run of the mill example that I find myself doing frequently, sadly. I have a husband who I'm madly in love with. I really am. We've been together now for 12 years and married, I should say, for 12 years. And we have a great relationship. But part of being a great relationship is being authentic and honest and standing up for what you believe in. And he and I don't always see eye to eye. In case anybody else has that experience, you're not alone. I'm sure not. But I my mind, I will get an emotion, I'll feel something when he disagrees with me. And it will physiologically be this burn in my chest, and my throat will tighten, and I will get angry. And then thoughts will start as a result of those feelings. And thoughts that come will be things like, you're wrong. You didn't listen. There he goes again, not caring. I could give you a myriad of this monologue that happens. Now I have a choice in this moment of what I'm going to do. So when we think about recreating or creating ourselves, whether you're in midlife or you're 20 or you're 75, I have to find opportunities to change my mind on how I show up, because I've tried it before where I take my thought and I share it with him and I say, you're wrong. You're doing it again. You never listen. And it doesn't go well. Even if I get my way, I don't feel good about it. So in looking for a new idea, I find that action speaks louder than my head. And by acting and doing something, then it stops my thinking, because at that point, my thinking's just obsessive. It's just this obsessive old rut of stuff that I'm used to saying over and over again. So what my action is, when he says something and I feel that physiological sensation and my mind starts talking to me and making noise because it's uncomfortable, is I've trained myself to get him a glass of water. So I'll say, excuse me, and I'll leave the room and I will go and I will literally take a glass out of the cabinet in the kitchen. I will fill up half with ice and then fill up to the top with water, and I will bring it to him and say, would you like a glass of water, darling? That is what I do. And he now knows what the glass of water is all about. And so usually he laughs and says, I would love one. Thank you. And that is my way of breaking a cycle of really just mental insanity and mess that's not going to support anybody. And it puts me into actions of love, because love is just an action. I always thought love was a feeling. And I was taught, no, it's an action, Cate. So if you want to love someone or be in love with someone, that means you are doing good for them or with them. And that was really helpful. Does that answer your
It
question?
does. What a powerful way to stop the mind chatter and stop the trajectory of whatever was going on and change it into an act of service, which then
Yes,
allows the two of you to come back to a place of neutrality and hopefully an opportunity for you to work through whatever the disagreement was. Um,
that is exactly it.
such a simple act, but so powerful. I think that is something that I'm going to start instituting in my family, whether it be with my husband or with my children. Just a simple act of breaking up the mind chatter
Right.
and coming to someone of, here is something for you. Now let's try and get back to working out what the two of us are trying to work out, because that's ultimately what an argument is trying to work out um, options that are good for everybody.
Right.
So,
And differences of opinion are very, very healthy. But when emotions get in the way of it and they get control of us, that's where we lose that opportunity to have that harmony that you're talking about. And service is key. It is key.
so amazing. And I think that is a great segue to jump into emotional intelligence, because you talked about, when emotions are controlling, but yet you are an advocate for emotional intelligence. As a matter of fact, you are a leader and a instructor of emotional intelligence. So please tell us, what in the world is this emotional intelligence?
Yeah, sure. Of course. Yes. And isn't it funny that we teach what we want to learn?
Yes.
So emotional intelligence is a term that really came from the studies that were done at Yale University in Pennsylvania and others. And it, interestingly enough, it came based on an idea that two philosophers were having as they were painting a house, literally one day. And one said to the other, as they were talking about a politician, what was he thinking when he said that? And they laughed because obviously they were having a political banter, but it led them into a very interesting conversation. And the conversation asked the question, was it his thoughts that led him to say what he said, or was something else going on? So they started doing some research into intelligence. And we talk a lot in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s about IQ, right? The intelligent quotient. And that is the way we decide how intelligent or quote unquote smart people might be. They can take a test. They say the IQ doesn't really change, but the more intelligent you are, the better chance for success. Well, these professors started taking a look at decisions that people made, how they acted and behaved, and what was high performance. Well, let me back up, I guess I should say, in asking what they asked themselves and through studies is what is different about two high performers when one is actually more successful than another. And they discovered something that they called an emotional intelligence or social intelligences. You can really study this expansively. But the bottom line was that within the brain, we have a limbic system. And what they discovered is that emotions are actually energy filled with information that can control and manipulate our reactions and also provide in themselves additional intelligence in our decision making that when listened to and applied and strengthened can help us make optimal decisions in life.
So let me get this straight. You are, in essence, leveraging emotional recognition to then help you in your own life, or helps the trajectory of your life. Am I getting that right?
You are getting that right. Emotional intelligence definitely helps you improve your relationships, your fulfillment in life. It helps you to accomplish more than maybe you were able to accomplish before because you're able to do complete goal setting better. But it's huge in connecting people with people. So I personally, the two areas you'll see emotional intelligence used the most are education, wanting to teach our children how to connect, and not only there's four factors to emotional intelligence, and one of them is understanding our own emotions.
Interesting.
So if I understand my own self-awareness is what we call this. And as I understand my own emotions, identify them, name them, but also discover what triggers them. Why does this emotion come up in these sorts of circumstances? Why do I always want to cry when this song plays? Why do I get angry every time I see that the dishes weren't done in the sink? Why do I feel intimidated and can't speak for myself when I'm in a boardroom of men and I'm a woman? Understanding those feelings, but then also understanding how my decision around those feelings is received by others is self-awareness. And that is one of 4 what are considered competencies in emotional intelligence.
So that,
And
which is back
yeah,
to when that example that you gave in the beginning of our conversation about when you're having a disagreement with your husband, why you are acknowledging and recognize your emotions and no longer allowing yourself to be captive to
I love that word.
the
Yes.
to the negative response of those emotions.
To the negative response, not to the emotion itself, because emotions are energy and information that are really here to support me in everything that I'm doing, but I didn't know that before. And so self-awareness, and it truly is a practice. Emotional intelligence, unlike like just in an intelligence quotient or IQ, EQ, as we like to call emotional intelligence, emotional quotient, EQ, really is something that can be strengthened. It's a practice. There are ways that you can build that muscle and start leveraging it for the better. As a matter of fact, and I know there's so I'm kind of going all over the place, Audra. So reel me in if you need to.
No, this is fascinating. This is emotional intelligence. It's not something that's taught in school, but from what you're sharing with us is that it's so powerful. Maybe it should be.
Yes, and that you're absolutely right. And thank you for reminding me of that, because the 2 areas we see it are education and then really in business. And I am on the business side of it. That's where my passion is. But I also have colleagues in the education arena, and that is what they focus on, is how do we help our young ones learn to identify and not be afraid of emotion or try to manage or manipulate or control an emotion, but in fact embrace the emotion, understand it, learn to recognize what it's telling us, not only within our bodies, but when other people have emotions, which is that second competency. It's social awareness. So one's ability to recognize and understand other people's emotions is also very important, as you can imagine, because emotions drive people, and people will drive performance in business. They will make decisions, and that can lead to peace or war in a country.
That is powerful, because you don't want to misunderstand somebody in another country that may have access to maybe nuclear warheads. That might be a
Right?
problem.
Well, and if you study history, you'll see that that's what we do. We
Yes.
have emotional arguments among leaders, and the next thing you know, the bombs are going off. It's crazy. Someone insulted the king's child, and it goes bad.
Yes.
So it's amazing how emotions have affected us in the past. So a couple other thoughts I had on emotional intelligence is that, just to be clear on what the competencies are for emotional intelligence, you have self-awareness, which is an ability to understand and monitor your own emotions. Social awareness is an ability to recognize and understand other people's emotions. Then there is social management, and that's when we're able to empathize with others' emotions based on the social setting they're in. And that's key. Empathy is not something that we really can overlook. Empathy is the old adage, walk a mile in another man's shoes.
Yes.
It was a Native American saying that I learned, you don't know a man until you've walked a mile in his moccasins. And I love that quote because it's so true. I don't know what other people are going through. And so one of the first things I can do to practice emotional intelligence when I'm in a tense situation is to practice empathy, is to stop and understand where they're coming from. And if I don't, then I can ask questions. And part of that comes from having self-awareness to realize that my feelings aren't someone else's problem. You can't make me feel a certain way. I feel what I feel when I feel it. If that makes
That
sense.
makes perfect sense, because you've had people say to you, you can't have anybody make you feel something that you're not already allowing. So what you're saying is this emotional intelligence study allows you of the, if I'm understanding the competencies, one is your own personal awareness of what your emotions are. Second is a social awareness of the people around you and what their emotions are. But now the third, which I think is layer upon layer, which I think is probably one of the more powerful competencies that I've coming to understand, is the social management of it. Is that it is an awareness of your own emotions, awareness of theirs, and an awareness of perhaps their actions are coming from emotions that you have no ownership on whatsoever. And you should not, therefore, be triggered by any emotions within yourself, because those emotions don't belong to you. Am I following this correctly?
That is part of it. Really, that third piece centers around, it anchors in empathy.
Empathy.
So definitely realizing that I don't need to take someone else's, reaction or anger or feeling personally is important. But then to be willing to step in and ask myself, do I recognize that feeling? So my husband's angry with me and he says something ugly to me. Can I recognize what that looks like? That looks like frustration. Have I been frustrated before? Oh, yeah. As a matter of fact, I have. What would I want someone to do if I was frustrated? Would I want them to yell at me? Probably not. Okay, maybe I won't yell at my husband in this situation. So I'm giving you really like broken out ideas of how you would apply that. But ultimately, we use empathy to understand the situation and other people's place in it so that we can help them navigate to a better place. To whether it's a better decision, like you were saying earlier, right? With couples or a boss and a subordinate, or if you're the boss and you have subordinates, however it works, children, parents, how do we come to that better decision? Because we're in relationship for a reason. We want to be in relationship. We want to move forward, or we want the paycheck. So we want to get along with the boss or the team or whoever. And so empathy is a really a key asset, and not as easy to practice as some people might think. Empathy is not something you can pretend to have. You've either got it or you don't. And I think for that reason, empathy, true empathy, comes with humility as well.
Oh, that is powerful that you had just said. And I want you to repeat that so people can really ruminate in that thought.
That empathy comes with humility.
Yes.
Yeah.
That they come hand in hand. That's really something that I think that people should really start to meditate on, because many of us have been in some situations that we may not have liked, and maybe we behaved badly. But having somebody recognize that and empathize with that and not hold it against us and try to help us navigate through that, again, what an act of service.
Right. And knowing what you know and what you think you know, there is a difference. I will think I understand something, and in fact, I don't. And so to move carefully with full respect of others is something that I've learned as well. And it helps me a lot, that I'm not the smartest person in the room, but I'm not the dumbest either. When I look at, excuse me, my clients that I coach, I typically have two types of women that they tend to take one or the other stance. And one tends to have the prideful perspective of, I know more than you do, right? Not me personally, but anyone,
Right.
the philosophical you. I know more, and therefore I can help others if they would only do it my way. I identify with that one because I like control.
Who doesn't?
That gets in my way every time. The other one is what I call pride in reverse. And what that is it's the self-loathing that so many women, it's almost genetic.
Yes.
It's so just insidious and intrusive in our lives. It's this, I'm no good. I'm not worthy. No one will ever see my value. I'm not smart enough. They know better. I'll never get this figured out. I wish I were, whatever, someone else. And that is the same self-centeredness as the prideful woman who thinks she has it all going on. They're both driven by ego. And that can be hard for the self-loathing woman to hear sometimes, because we often, when we are loathing ourselves, feel victim to it. Who in their right mind would hate themselves? If I didn't have such a crappy personality, or if I wasn't so ugly, maybe I would be, I wouldn't have self-loathing, but I'm so sad. I hate myself. Isn't this awful? And the truth of the matter is, it is awful. And I call it drowning in a wade pool, where I am filled with remorse and self-pity and loathing, so much so that I've really gotten in my own way, because I am not focused on service, which is what you brought up earlier. I am not willing to be a friend among a group of friends, but instead I'm worse than. So as long as I think I'm better than you, or as long as I think I'm worse or less than you, I'm not in humility. Humility is being right-sized. And when I am able to be okay with who I am, right, in acceptance with, this is Cate, right, middle-aged, have kids, going through some change. We actually are, well, there's lots that we're going through, but life on life's terms is not always easy to come by. And so learning to accept that, I've got good and I've got bad and I've got stuff I want to get better at, and I'm grateful for the growth I've done. That gets me closer in the humble range. And through that, I have a whole new line of sight into others, because I will see myself and other people every single time. And if I hate myself, I'll end up hating you. But if I can at least love or appreciate myself a little bit, then I can love and appreciate you a lot more.
I think that is so powerful. And we both have young adult daughters. And I certainly hope, as I have gotten older and I've learned better, so hopefully I'm doing better. I hope that these are the traits that I have not passed on to my daughter. I hope that I am consciously stopping the transmittal of these emotions and these feelings that don't serve us at all. So
Absolutely.
I'm hoping that, because I'm conscious of the things that I've inherited from my mother, and I don't want to pass them on. And I hope that we're doing better by our next generation, that I'm hoping that our daughters do better than us. That is the goal anyway. So we've
completely agree.
We've talked about the first three tenets. You said that there are four. What is the fourth tenet of emotional intelligence?
Yes, the fourth tenet of emotional intelligence is what we would call relationship management. And that is really taking those first three competencies and bringing them together to better manage and develop relationships and or teams and or family dynamics in anything that we do. So that's kind of the advanced skill of, now that I understand these other three legs of the stool, so to speak, how do I bring them all together to work cohesively and strengthen that capability? Developing my EQ gives me so many insights into myself and my relationships with others. I really believe that emotions are present for a reason. I think they connect us. I do think they give us insight, and it fuels our purpose when we are emotionally intelligent, when we are investing in ourselves to understand, what these feelings are, what they're trying to tell us, how they play out through other people, and that we are a part of a much greater whole. We're unique and special, just like everybody else. That's kind of the line I use. Then suddenly, what becomes much bigger than that, I think, is that it fuels a purpose. And oftentimes, I don't know about, well, I do know a little bit about you, Audra, but that concept of, what is my purpose? What am I here to do with my life? What is the meaning of life? All those questions. I think emotional intelligence has helped me a ton in really being able to clarify what my purpose is, what matters to me, and what I want to do with my life. And that's one thing that nobody can take away from me, and I'm so grateful for.
So this is clearly a powerful study. And as I said before, it's so powerful. It's kind of unfathomable to me that it's not being taught to our children in school, high school, college, that there aren't courses as these our young adolescents are forming and shaping. But you did mention that this is a muscle. So
Absolutely.
how do we start to recognize emotional intelligence, and B, how do we start to improve upon it and grow and be able to build upon these skills so we are finally at that fourth tenet where we are utilizing these skills to affect our everyday lives and improve them?
Absolutely. So there's a couple, basics that we can all start with. And I believe everything begins with just becoming aware. So becoming aware of my feelings and the experiences and the memories that trigger them. Just watching and listening and identifying and capturing that. To start by capturing it in a journal, right? And that's how we bring consciousness to what we're experiencing and what we're feeling. I can start then discovering what I call old ideas. I think there's always old ideas that are preventing me from any new experiences of living into the woman that I want to be. I joke sometimes talking about my husband, poor man, I'm going to bring it up again. One of my jokes that I sometimes share when I'm speaking is that I go to bed with a different man every evening. And that's because, and know that, yes, my husband and I are happily married, but, within a couple of years, we know the honeymoon's over. And I have to say that sometimes I can get faced with old fears because I'd been married before. I'd been married once before and it didn't work out well. So one thing that I was able to do in learning through self-awareness is explore some of the feelings that come when a marriage gets flat. Just the sense of flatness, of boredom, of fear of not being attractive to my husband anymore. And so I was given a new idea that I could become intentional and really adopt an open mind and a new idea with my husband. And this was the new idea. So my husband and I wake up in the morning and we encounter a full day of events. We encounter possibilities, lessons, adventures, all between the time that we say good morning and then leave one another for the day to work our separate jobs or live our separate lives, which is ultimately what happens. We're both very busy people. And then we come back together in the evening. The new idea, is it possible that we're not the same people in the evening that we were that morning? That was the new idea. And of course it is, because life has continued to transform who and what each of us are becoming. So it's something that it's kept our marriage fresh, because when I go to bed, I remind myself that the man getting into my bed may look like my husband, the same guy I woke up with, but he is not. He has had a life today filled with experiences, adventures, lessons, possibilities that have changed who he's becoming. And then when I started doing that, because I was willing to explore feelings that had me feeling flattened down, I now discovered new choices. And then that can lead to really the next level or step, if you will, in the pursuit of emotional intelligence. So knowing yourself, Where I have certifications is with an organization called 6 Seconds. And they break down a model of practicing emotional intelligence in what they call know yourself, choose yourself, and give yourself. Knowing yourself is what I really just described, which is that self-awareness piece we were talking about earlier. And that's an example of how you come to know yourself. It helps too with self-awareness to have a partner, a mentor, a friend, a coach, but someone who can help support you in that growth, because old ideas are insidious. They are hard to find, and they can drive my life decisions without me knowing it.
I think that is, I was sitting here thinking about all of the old ideas that have gone through in my head and how those old ideas have made me respond in such a way that but the reality is different. My reality
Right.
is different from those old ideas. So as I've come to understand emotional intelligence, I have made an active decision to retire old ideas, that
I love that.
those ideas aren't me anymore.
They're not.
They used to be, but I'm not that me anymore. I'm a different me. So I have given I've given those ideas the space to retire. And I am basing my reality on new ideas, new things on how I feel about myself, but new ideas on how I feel about others, my husband, my children, my coworkers. Uh, but it is an effort. This is not something that you learn it and, it's not like riding a bike that you just ride a bike, you learn how to ride it once and you're done. This is something that you have to make a decision to do every
Right.
single day.
And now what you're talking about, Audra, is that second pursuit, if you will, which is choosing yourself. So once you know yourself, once you've discovered these old ideas and you can see what's working for you and not working, you choose yourself. You become intentional to say, I'm not going to support this old idea. I'm going to do this by checking my motives. I am going to remember that fear is not my friend. So we have to let that one go. That's a great way to recognize an old idea that's not working, by the way, is fear. When I get afraid and I feel defeated, or if I feel guilty, these are not your friends. They are simply information to say, you've got an idea in here that's not working for you anymore. Check your motives. What's really going on? Is this choosing yourself? Are you choosing and optimizing your energy for life? Or are you people pleasing, or giving up or sacrificing something that you're not willing to let go of?
And again, and say for everyone that's listening what my favorite acronym is of what fear really means.
Yes. Well, I I have a few, but the one I think you're thinking of is false events appearing real.
Correct.
FEAR.
That's my
Yes.
favorite.
It's not real. It's just fear.
It's only exist in your head. It's not in reality.
That's right. That's right.
So,
and then once you become intentional, you get to become purposeful. You get to give yourself. So this is almost full circle to this conversation where you started it with service, because I become aware, I know myself, I become intentional by choosing myself, and then I become purposeful by giving myself. All great leaders will walk a mile in another woman's high heels, and they will be purposeful with empathy. They'll be cognitive with it, and they will seek to understand, and they will be emotional with it, and they will seek to connect. And both are very, very necessary. So this is where we can begin recognizing, understanding, and responding with shared experience. And that is when we start truly pursuing our noble goals.
So powerful. You bringing this forward is one of the reasons why I wanted to do this podcast in the first place. One of the reasons why it was important for me to interview you and share your knowledge about this emotional intelligence with the audience, because it's all about us becoming, and all of us becoming that greater version of ourselves that we are striving for and are working on every single day and in plain sight.
Yes.
That's the most amazing thing. We're doing extraordinary things in plain sight, and we're all climbing our own mountains, if you will, and nobody knows that we're doing it because we make it look so easy. But you and I both know that this is not easy.
This is not easy. The inner work is harder than the outer work too. You know, being willing to let go of that idea may seem simple, but it is not. That is where, you know, that's where the women and the girls are separated. It takes real courage to look at the truth.
Isn't that the truth? And I can speak from experience. This having Cate here with us is one, partly because I wanted to share her knowledge with as many people as possible, and others it's a little bit selfish on my part because I started to learn from Cate all of these principles over the last 12 months or so, and it has been a journey, and we've had these conversations in depth, and a lot of these concepts that we're talking about were difficult and painful and things that made me take a breath and a pause that I had to really look at with some harsh realities and realize what was going on, and a lot of what was going on I was doing to myself. But that's the hard part. That's the hard work.
Yeah.
But once I've moved through that, having those noble goals and becoming the next best version of myself has been a joy to do. Not always, but for the most part has been a joy to do. And I hope that this resonates with anyone that's listening today, to help you move on to your next best version of yourselves and create those next best noble goals. Cate, this has been fascinating. I thank you for this. But before I let you go, I want to ask you a couple of fun questions.
Okay.
So here's a fun question is, right now, what are you currently reading?
Oh, I am actually reading Homo Deus again. And you're going to ask me for the author, and I can hardly pronounce his name. Let me see if I can find it. He's Israeli. He wrote a book called Sapiens. His name is Yuval Noah Harari, and fascinating read. Just fascinating read about humanity and society and what we worship, and how we manifest reality. It's pretty interesting. I'm a big nonfiction fan. So there you go. What's the next question?
Next question. What are you currently learning?
What am I currently learning? Well, I'm actually learning. I know what's fun to share with you that I'm learning. So I'm learning more about my creativity right now. I am focused on my creativity, and I am also working through a workbook called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. If you haven't read it or done it, check it out. It is really brings me back to my creative self, which is part of my original essence, and I can't wait to see what I become through that work.
I'm starting to sense a theme here. Everybody, I hope everybody is catching on to that. There's a theme. This is always a work in progress. So
it does not stop, that's for sure.
So my last question is, what's next?
Wow. You know, I just recently got promoted to a senior leadership level at my company. I've never been here before, so that is definitely a new exploration. But really what my passion is leading me to is to get my first book published. So emotional intelligence according to Cate, and being able to really share some experience and strength and ideas based on the work I've done with other women, and certainly what I've learned, and some of the gaps I think we hit, particularly in business as women. So that's what we're working on, and I hope that will come to fruition, and I can tell you about my published book the next time we do this.
That would be wonderful. Cate, when you do publish that book, I will be at your launch party. That is a promise.
I love it. I love it. Thank you.
So with that, I want to thank you so much for agreeing to do this. This has been really special to me, very important to me, and I hope that it has had some meaning and some impact to the listeners out there. And again, I just want to say thank you so much for doing this and giving me your time and your patience and your leadership and your guidance, because it's meant so much to me and it's meant everything. So thank you for all of it.
Thank you, Audra. You mean the world to me too.
So with that, we will join you next week, and I can't wait to see what's next. Everyone, have a wonderful and fabulous week. That's our show today. Thank you so much for joining me. But before I let you go, I have 2 items of business that I must get out there. Number 1 is I want to talk to as many women as possible. So please, if you know someone or you are someone that is ready to share your story, please hit us up on our socials at Women in the Arena on Facebook or Arena Women on Instagram. Next, I have some giant, big fat thank yous that I need to extend out there. Number 1 is to my guests. Without you, there is no show. So thank you so much for your generosity of time, your willingness to be authentic and completely vulnerable and share a piece of you with us. Next is to my audience. I appreciate and am grateful for your gift of your time, and I hope that you have used it wisely with us. Next is to our composer of our intro music, that is to Star Diva, who's incredibly talented. And last, but certainly not least, is to my producer, my number 1 son, my son Gavin Agan. Without you, this show is just a bunch of ramblings and recordings that don't make any sense. Thank you so much for everyone who's joined me, and I look forward to seeing you next time.
This is just the beginning.
That's our show. I am so grateful for each and every one of you and your unwavering support and your continued belief in this movement that has become much bigger than me, much bigger than just a podcast. It has become this forward momentum that we are all doing together. If you are ready, or you know somebody that is ready to tell your story and share your value with the world, please connect with me. You can reach me at audra@womeninthearena.net. I am so honored and thankful that you will share your story with me, and I'll make sure that it is well taken care of. I will never stop thanking each and every one of you, and I cannot wait to talk to you again next week as we share another woman's story and we celebrate her doing extraordinary things in plain sight. We'll see you next time.
This is just